I had just poured my coffee when I saw it. This blinding yellow Hummer, parked sideways across my ranch gate, like God himself had dropped a boulder just to mess with my morning. It blocked the only road in or out. The engine was running, doors locked, and the license plate screamed Queen HOA. For half a second, I figured it had to be a prank, someone trying to rattle the old man on the hill, but then I spotted this glittering pink sign taped to the windshield. Temporary community blockade. Property violation under review. Yeah, that happened. I laughed so hard I sloshed coffee down my boot. Because let me tell you, Karen had pulled some wild stunts before, but this was her crowning glory. She'd finally declared war on the dirt itself. Sun just coming up through the pines, cattle waiting behind the gate for their feed, and I realized Karen hadn't just crossed the line, she'd parked on it. By sundown, I promised myself that Hummer would either roll away or roll straight down. This whole feud started as a little irritation, something you could wave off and forget. But Karen was like a mosquito that learned how to work a megaphone. She moved into the subdivision across the road about a year back, carrying her HOA rulebook like Moses with the tablets, and set her sights on my tractors, my fences, my old gravel road. Said it was destroying her country aesthetic. Every week brought a new letter, folded perfect, smelling of perfume, accusing me of noise pollution, unsanctioned fence color, even disruptive odor due to organic fertilizer. She once called the sheriff because she said my cows were glaring at her too aggressively. The man could barely keep a straight face standing by my corral, listening to her describe a heifer like it was some criminal mastermind. But today wasn't about laughter. Today was about using my own damn gate. I stepped closer to the Hummer, boots crunching on the gravel she hated so much, and took in the absurd scene, her SUV gleaming like a trophy, spotless under the sun. She must have snuck it over before dawn, parked it as a barricade, strutted home feeling like she'd won. A few yards away, I spotted her drone, hers, of course, hovering to capture every angle for that HOA newsletter, keeping our community clean. I could almost hear her in my head, narrating some dramatic saga about resisting harmony. I shook my head, pulled out my phone, and recorded the whole thing. Proof matters with people like her, especially after last time when she tried to claim my irrigation runoff flooded her meditation garden. Sheriff confirmed later the so-called garden was just a patch of imported turf she'd forgotten to water. Then, like clockwork, her voice rang out from the trail up to the gate. "You can't just trample rules, Hank." She was waving her clipboard around like a saber, wearing a hat big enough to shade a pickup, sunglasses, and this look that could curdle milk. "This road is part of our shared community space." "Sure, Karen. Never mind that the deed in my cabin says otherwise. You've been driving tractors, scaring residents, spreading dust," she said, then paused for a dramatic sniff. "And whatever that smell is, it's not environmentally compliant." I just leaned on the gate and smiled. "That's a ranch, Karen. Smells like work, something you might not recognize." She puffed up like an angry hen. "You think this is funny? The HOA will fine you for every violation." I nodded toward the Hummer. "I'll add this obstruction to the list, right under unauthorized stupidity." The sheriff rolled up 20 minutes later, half amused, half tired. "Morning, Hank." "Morning, ma'am." Karen launched into her speech, waving that clipboard as if she were conducting a trial. "He's violating community policy. The road's an eyesore, the equipment's dangerous, and I'm exercising my right to restrict access." The sheriff blinked, looked at me, then at her. "You blocked a man's only road?" She folded her arms. "For the good of the neighborhood." He turned to me. "You call this in yet?" I showed him my video. He let out a low chuckle. "She's trespassing, all right. But let's do it by the book." Karen scoffed. "Which book?" "The HOA guidelines clearly state." "Ma'am," the sheriff cut her off, "this is county jurisdiction, not your subdivision. You can't park here." She tried to argue zoning boundaries, probably picked up from some blog, but the sheriff had seen enough. 10 minutes to move it, or I tow it," he said. She glared at me. "You wouldn't dare." I grinned, glancing at my tractor out by the barn. "You're right. I wouldn't tow it. I'd move it myself." The sheriff gave me a look that said, "Don't you?" And I shot back one that said, "Watch me." Karen stomped off, muttering legal threats, but she didn't move the Hummer. She figured I was bluffing. She always did. I waited, letting the irritation settle into certainty. the kind you get after a lifetime of nonsense. My grandfather used to say, "Machines don't start wars, but they sure know how to end them." So I waited, gave her a chance to back off, then made my plan. By noon, she was back, folding chair, thermos, sunglasses, smug smile, taking selfies for social media. I watched from the porch as she sat there in her perfect outfit, dust swirling around her. I even brought her water, just to be polite. She accused me of bribing a witness. By evening, the wind picked up, and I sat with my coffee watching that Hummer glint in the sunset. My patience was thin as barbed wire, but timing was everything. When the sheriff's shift ended and the sky turned copper, I told myself, tomorrow, the road would be clear. Not through argument, but through consequence. See, before she parked that Hummer, Karen was already legendary for hating dust more than sin. The day she moved in, it was like a thundercloud rolling over blue sky. She stepped out of her SUV and her first words weren't hello, but is this normal? As if the dirt had offended her personally. Within a week, she called a meeting about rural modernization, her code for erasing anything that made this place home. Flyers everywhere about property uniformity and aesthetic preservation. Some city folks nodded along. My neighbor Earl nearly choked laughing. She wants to ban tractors before 9 a.m. How we supposed to feed the cattle, teleport the hay? But she didn't give up. First came the letters, then uninvited fence inspections, then measuring my property line with a ruler. She complained about my rooster crowing, my tractor at dusk, even my dog's public intimidation. The sheriff stopped by, more for comedy than law, warning me to keep it all by the book. She's the type who records everything. I was polite, but I took notes. The turning point was one afternoon when she blamed my tractor for wind blowing her flower petals into the mud. "You people with your machines." I told her, "Peace doesn't come from petals, Karen. It comes from minding your own business." She didn't laugh. Next thing I know, she's writing to the local paper about rural neglect. Her photo in the paper, hands on hips, my barn blurred behind her like the villain's lair. The kids nicknamed her Sheriff of Sidewalks. Someone made t-shirts, "I survived the HOA." She filed harassment complaints against the fair committee. The more she tried to control, the more the town laughed. When I put down fresh gravel after a storm, she screamed that the rocks were too coarse and would injure law-abiding citizens' tires. No one but me even drove the road. She said, "That's not the point." Then she hired a private surveyor to reinterpret my boundaries. He told me she'd asked if we could redraw the lines. "She's digging her own ditch," I said. Still, part of me pitied her. She wasn't evil, just addicted to control. Maybe she thought if she could tame the land, she'd quiet her own loneliness. But pity runs dry when someone turns your life into their hobby. The tension between us was thick as summer mud. I caught her recording me from behind curtains, narrating like a wildlife documentary. The dangerous rural male in his natural habitat. I'd wave, she'd duck. When winter froze the road, things were quiet, too quiet. I knew she was brewing something big. That morning she blocked my gate. All her plans came due. I walked up, coffee in hand, and just stared. Hummer parked hard, clipboard on the hood, her sign threatening, HOA enforcement. The irony was almost poetic. My cameras had everything. The sheriff rolled up again, shaking his head. "She finally did it, huh?" "She parked it." "I moved it," I said. Simple as that. Karen showed up, screeching about community review. I just smiled. Community review of what? My patience. She smirked, thinking she'd win. She didn't know I'd called the sheriff, taken the pictures, documented every inch. By sundown, that Hummer was going to move. The sun dropped. I grabbed my tractor keys, slung the heavy chain over my shoulder, and headed for the gate. Karen tried blocking me. "This is illegal." "No, Karen. What's illegal is parking here." Her friends started recording. The crowd on the ridge went quiet. I started the tractor, engine roaring, dust swirling. I hooked the chain to the Hummer's axle. Karen turned pale. "You'll regret this," she screamed, but I'd heard that before. I shifted gears. The chain snapped tight. The Hummer rocked, then with a groan and a cloud of dust, slid into the ditch like it was bowing to the land. The road was clear. The whole valley seemed to exhale. Karen was speechless, clipboard dangling. Her two friends tried to record, but just stared. The sheriff rolled up, looked at the scene, then at me. Guess that's one way to clear a blockade. I just pointed at the open road. She gave you no choice, huh? She parked it. I moved it. Karen screamed about destroyed property. The sheriff just said, "Ma'am, you blocked private land. This is the civil consequence." The crowd started laughing. Someone yelled, "Guess the HOA's got a new speed bump." Karen turned beet red, ranting about lawsuits and social media vengeance. But it was over. The video spread fast. People online called it the most satisfying ranch revenge they'd ever seen. In the days that followed, Karen filed police reports, went nowhere. Insurance denied her claim after seeing the footage. The HOA board crumbled, half resigned, the rest voted her out. The county sent me a formal letter. My road was now legally private. No more HOA nonsense, ever. Karen vanished for a week, then drove by in a borrowed sedan, face pale and tight. She didn't stop, didn't wave. There was nothing left to say. You can't reason with someone who confuses control with purpose. You just let them run out of fuel. A few months later, Karen sold her house. The moving truck rumbled out, and the land felt lighter. The new neighbors were friendly, no fancy mailbox, no gold numbers. The road, finally quiet, stretching straight and clear. People around town kept talking about the Hummer, the tractor, the way the land always has the final say. I'd walk the fence line and think about everything that happened, not with pride, not with anger, but with a deep kind of peace. Sometimes folks stopped by to ask for the story, to hear how patience outlasted pride. Sometimes I told it, sometimes I just nodded at the sign by my gate, "Respect the road." The truth is, the land doesn't argue, doesn't hold grudges. It just remembers. When folks forget that, something always pushes back, a storm, a fence, a stubborn old man with a tractor. Peace isn't something you win. It's something you earn by standing your ground when you have to and letting the world find its balance. So what do you think? Was I right to do what I did, or was there another way? Let me know how you'd have handled it, because out here, lines matter, not just on the land, but in how we live with each other. Drop your thoughts below. Tell me if you've ever had to stand your ground or seen justice done the old-fashioned way. I'll be here, watching the road, sipping my coffee, and listening.